Three Ravens Publishing presents Hawksbill Station ×2, the novella and the novel. Written by Robert Silverberg. Narrated by Phillip. Dedication. For Frederick Pohl. It's about time. Forward. In some confusion, I had given up the writing of science fiction in the winter of 1958 to 59, after 4 or 5 years of frenzied activity, in which I had written enough of the stuff to fill 3 or 4 average careers. Still only in my mid-20s, puzzled about my place in a genre that I loved deeply but seemed unable to serve well, I turned away and wandered for a few years in a morass of hecare that still gives me the creeps when I look at the titles of the things I was writing then. I was eaten by monster crabs, World of Living Corpses, The Syndicate Moves In, and much god-awful more. And then, Frederick Pohl, who had become editor of the important SF magazine, Galaxy, teased me back into science fiction on a now-and-then basis by making me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I did a few short stories for him at a rate of about 1 every 6 months, and then a series of novelettes that became the book To Open the Sky. And by then, it was now 1965, I was hooked on writing SF all over again. Only this time, because Pohl had given me the space to write the stories exactly as I felt they ought to be written, because I was no longer, as I had been from 1955 to 1958, tailoring my product to some editor's notion of what was acceptable. I was far more satisfied with what I was writing. At last, stories which I as a critical reader would have been interested in reading. And so began the second phase of my career, the so-called New Silverberg that elicited so much surprise comment in the mid-1960s. After the To the Open Sky stories became a novel for Doubleday, The Time Hoppers, which I finished in March of 1966, and in mid-April, I wrote to Pohl about another ambitious project that had grown out of my own deep interest in paleontology and my almost obsessive fascination with the idea of traveling in time. What I told him was, I'm thinking in very science-fictional terms these days, and I want to get these stories written while the fit is still on me. This one would be a novella, 15,000 words, 20,000, somewhere within that range. I have it roughed out, though not solidly enough for me to want to talk much about the plot, except to say that the story takes place in a camp for political prisoners on Earth, approximately 2.5 billion years ago. If you can find room for a Silverberg story of this length, I'd like to write it sometime in the next month. Fred gave me the go-ahead. I set to work immediately, and wrote the story in one white-hot week, 20,000 words, mailing it to him on May 5th. By May 11th, I had word of its acceptance. It was published in the August 1967 issue of Galaxy, and brought me one of the most cherishable reader comments I've ever received. The famed science writer, Willie Ley,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?